When I was in going for my MDiv, I I think the whole academic thing kind of clicked. I was a very average student in high school and at Penn, um, and liked what I liked. But if I wasn't into the class, I really shamefully sort of just did enough to get by. But when I went to seminary, I think it really clicked, and I really enjoyed research and writing and projects and such. And I had a couple of my teachers, a guy named Kirk Byron Jones, who's a wonderful sort of author on self-care and various things, and then one of the greatest preachers in this country. A guy named Benjamin Valentin, who I think is one of the great Latino Hispanic theologians too. Both said, Chad, you should think about going for your PhD and your doctorate. And I responded with a flat no, and believing that they weren't doing anything, not those two personally, because they were doing a lot, but believing that scholars don't do much besides kind of write their books and and live on university and seminary campuses, but they're not out there bringing about change. They're not protesting. They're not helping the poor. They're not preaching, all that sort of stuff, which I think is a misconception. I think Lutheran's faculty alone breaks that mold. Whether it's Dr. Day, who's involved in sort of handgun violence work in her denomination, is just a powerful example, or the stuff that Dr. Hoffmeyer does, or John Paul. I mean, there's example after example of people who are out there um, teaching, but also and in teaching non-seminary students too, but also involved in denominational things and political stuff and campaign. I mean, they were great. All to say, so I said no originally. I didn't want to go get my PhD. And then when I was working at the hospital as a hospital chaplain, I worked in the trauma bay and saw every single night gunshot victim coming, gunshot victim, and they all looked like me, young black men who could be me, who could have been me. And I think I was convicted around what can we do proactively about this. And in conversation with various people, it's a multi-front battle, to use a violent metaphor. I apologize. That needs to be fought sort of spiritually and pastorally in congregations. It needs to be fought sort of in one-on-one relationships on the ground with nonprofits. It needs to be fought on the political sphere, as well as in the intellectual sphere too. And the scholarship that can be written about poverty, violence, war, sexism, racism, I think is just as important as the political work that can be done around passing bills against hate crimes, and just as important as the work that Sister Mary Scullion does, or that sort of anti-violence activists do. It's just as important in sort of helping us frame arguments, helping us to sort of articulate struggle and articulate hope. So I think that was the first time I began to think about maybe I too could have something to say about the various issues of our time. On top of the fact that it's another chance to learn and go a little bit deeper around things that I love, around faith and society and various things. By that point, though, I also had a child. My first daughter, Carissa Faith, had arrived, and I think I was sort of committed to living in Philadelphia. I love the city. It's close to my home. It's become my home. It's great in this sort of northeast corridor. It's a wonderfully cosmopolitan place, and so I wanted to sort of study here. I did not want to go to school here at Penn. I think we have a fine religious studies department, but it's a religious studies department, which is very different than a theological school. And someone told me to check out Lutheran. I think I came to Lutheran really by way of Dr. Day's reputation. I think was the first one, for all the reasons I've named before. So I came and spoke to Dean Crick at the time, who was wonderful, and I missed deeply. But I'm glad she's enjoying retirement. And visited with her and Dr. Day, and sat down and shared a little bit about my dreams of studying hip hop and black church and poverty stuff. And she was down. Dr. Day said, it's great, awesome. Let's wrestle with this together. And she, her, as well as the other professors I met on this time, really made it very, very clear that the few other places I got into, Lutheran was the spot I wanted to be. I think also the flexibility it would allow me to while needing to be sort of fully in residence for the first couple of years, it would allow me to continue to work and continue, which I needed to. I was raising a family at the time. Still am raising a family, and allow me to teach a little bit. I think the emphasis on teaching, I think, makes Lutheran's doctoral program a little bit different than others. I mean, a lot of schools have great faculty. There are a few other great urban schools, but the unique emphasis on creating people who are good teachers. Not that I'm a good teacher, but I know my other cohort, Derek and Sano and Martin and other people are really great teachers. I think comes from Dean Crick, I think, being such a Christian education specialist. But I mean, there's special classes preparing you to teach, which is cool. And the really heavy emphasis on TAing and the mentoring that happens there. I mean, when I finished Lutheran, I felt like I was ready to teach any course there. I got to see up close Katie Day, Stephen Ray, Nelson Rivera, John Hoffmeyer, Phil Cray himself, others sort of just teach, and their expertise in the classroom. It was inspiring. You know, I saw the way people would light up when they're reading, you know, Christ and Culture, or when Phil Cray is sort of walking us through Marx. It's you know, I would sort of light up like, wow, these are great teachers, and I'm sitting there taking notes on. This is amazing. So it was such a. I think it makes our program a little bit different. I think the other commitment to public theology, which was a term I hadn't really heard before, I think makes this program very, very, very special. The biggest critique I had, and that most people have about theologians, is that it's an inaccessible field. It's people who are producing papers and books for their colleagues and to present at AAR and other conventions. And the only people buying the books are other scholars or occasionally being used in seminary classrooms. And they're writing about stuff that is cool and neat, but to a lot of people is irrelevant. Some people are trying to just find their next meal or a place to sleep tonight, and we're talking about sort of eschatology and other sorts of stuff, which I don't mean to demean. I think it's very important. But I think Lutheran has this commitment, or certainly the program, to doing theology in a way that is accessible to folks who aren't in the classroom. That's not only readable, but allows for democratic education, democratic conversation to happen too. So there's constantly people from the community coming onto campus. We're constantly going off campus. I mean, Dr. Day's whole Germantown Avenue project is just one of tons and tons of examples there. I think the UTI as a program of expanding the reach of who Lutheran students are all inspiring things. And you cannot come through Lutheran without sort of being painted with this public theology brush. I think if you look at all the various pastors who have gone through Lutheran in the last several years, their ministries reflect that. Pastors, teachers, community members, denominational execs who are committed to bringing church from within these four walls to connect with the world. To me, that is such a great witness of Christianity, such a Christ-like model. And Luther's got it. You know, it's not a perfect place, but it's got that. And to me, that was so attractive to me. Beyond wanting to get a PhD, I want to be a part of this community that's doing such neat stuff in Philadelphia and really globally too.